Cool, guys. So the first section, stance. The reason that I'm doing position and I want to talk about things kind of in a way where we're going to move fairly linearly, but I want the most important things kind of being in the beginning, and then kind of the more complex, more challenging things to understand and to be in control of. Those challenging control of things I want to be later. You first have to have a good stance, okay? So your stance I'm defining as the way that you're going to connect yourself to the floor and the way that your own body is positioned, not according to your opponent. Okay, so what I mean is I can either stand in a more squared stance or I can stand in a more bladed stance. I can also be really rooted to the floor, which means I'm very connected to the floor, or I can be more bouncy. Okay, the reason that these things are important is because if you don't understand that you're only capable of moving in certain ways depending on the way that your feet are connected to the floor and the way that they're facing, you're not going to be able to fully understand martial arts in general, and definitely not striking. Okay, so the way that let's start with connecting to the floor. Okay, if I'm connected to the floor, I just have different abilities than if I'm a little bit more floaty, right? Like we'll get into it a little bit more in a second. But that's really, really important, is the connection to the floor. The second thing that's really important is the way that my feet are. If my feet are in more of a line, like in a bladed stance, it's going to be really easy for me to move in and out, but not as easy for me to move left to right, unless I'm manipulating my stance, to which case now I'm in a more squared stance. And in a more squared stance, now you can start moving left to right really easy. And the reason that I'm going to really harp on a lot of these really important conceptual ideas is because I know from past experience, I've had coaches and I've just had instruction, watched it or had it done to me, where people are explaining things and it's just not clicking in my body. And a lot of the reason that that is the case isn't because your instructor isn't instructing it that well. It's sometimes just because the way that you're, like the physiology of your body and the physics of like having a good stance and the way that balance works and the way that connecting to the floor and force works can become like really mumbled and jumbled. And if you don't understand that piece, no matter how much people are trying to help you, they might not be able to help you. So that's a really important reason why I'm going to just keep harping over and over and over again about some really important concepts, like the way that your feet are connecting to the floor and the way that your feet are positioned on the floor, meaning which directions you're capable of moving, and how you're able to balance yourself, in what areas you're able to better balance yourself. If I'm in a bladed stance, I can get knocked over this way really easy, but not this way really easy. If I'm more square, I can get knocked over this way really easy, but not this way really easy. Okay? So to dive a little bit deeper into the rooted versus the floating or the bouncy style of fighting, it's really important to understand what's actually happening. So when I'm more rooted to the floor, and I don't see a lot of this terminology also being used when you're like getting an explanation either from commentators or instructors or coaches. Like I don't see this becoming like a really common theme that people talk about, because it is a little bit harder to grasp conceptually, because it's kind of in my body versus what you can aesthetically see. So what I mean by that is it's really easy for someone on the other side of a TV or a commentator or someone who only has like this much knowledge about martial arts but maybe not like this much, to see a stance that looks like this and think that they have all of the same advantages if I'm like this, whether I'm rooted, and by rooted I want to define that as being very connected to the floor. You're never always connected to the floor. Most of the time there is a little bit of some type of bounce going on, but rooted means that you're much more connected to the floor than someone who's a little bit more bouncy like this. What's happening when I'm bouncing in my stance or floating in my stance is my feet are coming up off the floor, they're connecting to the floor. Up off the floor, connecting to the floor. And the reason that that's really important, I mean, for a number of reasons, the main one being that power, your ability to move, always happens when you're on the floor. If I'm floating in the air, I cannot move any direction. When I jump up in the air, I can't jump up in the air and then magically shift to my right or shift to my left. That's not how it happens. It happens from the floor, okay? And the reason that that's really important is because, like I said, that's very hard for people to see and to understand and to understand the advantages and the disadvantages to the two, because like I said, it's a little bit more challenging to see those types of things. So to get back to my point, a stance that looks like this, that's connected to the floor, has a lot different advantages and disadvantages versus if I'm a little bit more like this and connecting to the floor. Okay? When you're rooted, the biggest advantage that you have is that your reaction time is very fast compared to someone that's bouncing. Okay? And what I mean by that is that if my feet are already very connected to the floor, I can throw almost any of my weapons on the flip of a dime. Is that the correct type of terminology? I'm really bad at those types of sayings and stuff, so I'm gonna fuck those up a lot. I apologize, but yeah, we'll call it a flip of a dime, okay? When my feet are connected to the floor, I can react very quickly on the flip of a dime, okay? So when I'm here like this, if I want to throw a punch, it can happen at any time. When I'm bouncing, I have to wait for my feet to reconnect to the floor and then go again, and then throw my attack, okay? And that happens in like a split second. It's not like we're fighting like this and I'm going, but that's a really exaggerated example of what's happening, so that can maybe help you conceptually understand that type of style versus more of a rooted style. But the reason that that's important is because if I'm bouncing back and forth, I have to wait for my feet to connect in order for me to throw an attack, okay? Where if I'm rooted, my reaction time can be very fast, okay? So when my feet are connected, my reaction time is very, very quick. What isn't very quick is my ability to be agile, okay? When I'm bouncy, I can move myself in almost all directions at all times because I'm never really super stationary and glued to the mat. When I'm glued to the mat, it can be hard for me to keep really glued and then move a direction, move a direction, move a direction, move a direction, okay? When I'm floating, I can definitely move in all directions. Me personally, I'm much better at floating, okay? The reason being is that because I very greatly, highly valued keeping myself safe and being defensive. And usually what that means is when I'm trying to keep myself safe, it means that I'm having to outposition according to the other person by like angles and feints and in and out and all of that stuff. That stuff keeps you really safe, okay? So when you are rooted, you definitely have to have your hands in a safer spot. You have to do different things that we'll talk about in a minute when we get to hand position and when we get to our stance in a second here. But I just want to harp really hard that the biggest advantage to being rooted is that my reaction time is very quick. When I'm bouncing, my reaction time isn't going to be as quick, but I can move in space a lot better, which is going to make me much more agile. Another thing that's really important for you guys to understand, and I know that like getting hit hard is more of a dynamic thing than whether I'm bracing or not bracing or anything, but if I'm going to punch the wall as hard as I can and say that this is the wall is not going to move because the wall is very connected to the floor. When I hit that wall, I can punch the wall so hard that the likelihood of me breaking my hand if I do it hard enough is very high. What that means is that I can crack that wall really hard because it's connected to the floor. When there's a heavy bag and it's hanging from a chain and I hit that bag and it moves, unless that thing is like made of stone, okay, as long as it moves, I'm likely not going to break my hand or like hurt it significantly. What that means is the amount of force that I can hit something that isn't connected to the floor isn't as much as something that I can hit that is really connected to the floor. So if you are going to be the person that connects to the floor, you have to understand that when you do get hit, you're making yourself one of those targets that isn't going to move, which means when you get hit anywhere and you're glued to the mat, your body is going to take that hit. Whereas if I'm a little bit bouncy and someone hits me and I float away from it, I'm not getting hit nearly as hard, okay? And that's important because I know that likely you guys are watching this because you guys like my fights and all that stuff. And when you guys see me get hit and sometimes I'm in this type of position, part of that is like me doing that a little bit on purpose, but part of it is I think my body realizing that if it gets hit by a punch that's going this direction, it's not going to hurt as hard or as bad as if I'm standing right here and the punch hits me like this, like a drunken monkey style, you know, like they say when you're in a car accident, the drunk person who's like flailing. When you get hit, your body just moves in a way where it's relaxed. Same thing when you get hit with a punch. I'm not saying anytime you get hit, you just turn into like thin air and just think that like that's going to be an okay thing, because there are definitely like more dynamic things at play here. But that is a bit of an important point to understand. If you are going to be the rooted guy, you can kind of get cracked pretty good. Where if you're the floaty guy, the likelihood of you getting hit pretty good, and that force being energetically put into your body is a little bit less. Okay. Another thing that's really important is that this is going to come really natural to different body types, and just in general what you're built like. I almost don't want to use like shorter, stocky archetype guy, because there's been plenty of examples of people that don't root to the floor that are built like that. And then there's also a lot of really good examples of people that are long, lean, and do connect to the floor really well. So I don't want that to be a thing, as much as I just want you guys to understand that a lot of you, while you're watching this on the computer and you go to the gym later and you're shadowboxing or whatever, I want you to really pay attention to the way that your body is naturally doing things. A lot of people, including myself, naturally do this really well. Like I enjoy being mobile. That's like fun for me. It aesthetically looks nice to me. I think it has like like I like making it that type of art, okay? And then there's guys that are really plotty. And plotty is not being bad. Plotty is fine, but again, you just have to know how to use your advantages for yourself, okay? So being plotty is not bad. Some of you guys are going to be like that. So when you're shadow boxing, understand that that's a thing, and understand that me being a little bit more mobile is a thing, and you have to figure out whether you need to move a little bit more towards the middle. If you're a little bit more of the bouncy guy, you need to be a little bit more rooted. If you're a little bit rooted, you need to be more of the bouncy guys. Because if you watch some of the best guys in the world, usually they do both really, really well. So that's really important to note. So let's get into the positioning of our feet, okay? So while rooted is something that happens, it can happen in a squared stance, it can happen in a bladed stance. The way that we position our body is either in a bladed way or a squared way. And again, or actually, no, we haven't gone over this spiel yet, so let me give you guys this spiel. Almost everything in fighting is on a spectrum, okay? So when I use terms like bladed, squared, I don't mean that by all the way bladed, all the way squared. The only reason that I have to use those types of words is because they're easily to conceive and to understand in your brain when you get like a really exaggerated one end of the definition and then the other end of the definition. So why this is important is because when I'm explaining a lot of things, they will be in some type of duality, where right now we're talking about a bladed stance versus a squared stance. A lot of you guys don't have to choose bladed or squared. That's not how it works. When we're going to talk about hand position in, you know, however many minutes once I'm done with this first part, when we talk about closed and a long guard, it doesn't need to be one or the other. So you don't have to look at the sport like that, okay? How you can look at the sport is as an entire spectrum and an entire range, where this is more like bladed concepts, these are more squared concepts, but a lot of you guys are going to fall like somewhere in here, maybe in the middle, but that's totally up to you. That's totally up to the type of art that you want to make, and how you want to make fighting look for yourself, and just what comes natural to you and what doesn't come natural. So the first two ways that we're going to talk about our position or our connection to the floor is in a bladed stance and a squared stance. The way that I'm going to define these is in a squared stance, my shoulders are going to be a little bit more pointed at you, okay? And the reason being is that my feet are going to be a little bit wider, okay? This obviously has its advantages and its disadvantages, but let's define a squared stance as one where my feet are kind of more or less pointing forward. Don't get too like caught up in like, hey, should my right foot be placed at this degree or this degree? Everyone's body is different. Some people are mega flexible in some ways. Some people have, like, your guys' attributes are going to be way, way different than the next person. So there is no right or wrong answer in that. But just for the sake of trying to define it, a squared stance, my feet are a little bit more pointed forward. My shoulders are at you. and I'm like this, I'm giving you a lot of my body. In a bladed stance, we're going to be more on a line or a balance beam, okay? And again, this is like a really exaggerated example where my feet, for me to point them forward, I'd be super stupid to try to fight like this. I don't even know like what this would even like look like, maybe like some stupid Irish stuff. But in a bladed stance, usually my foot is going to be pointed a little bit this way, but my feet are in a pretty straight line, okay? The reason that it's important to understand the way that your feet are positioned onto the floor according to your body is because they say where you can move, okay? When you're in a squared stance, you're not going to move forward and backwards well, okay? When you do start to like, and that's like not to say that you can't do it, it's to say that it's going to be a lot less easy comparatively to the other stance, okay? So when I'm in a squared stance, me moving back and forth, I definitely can do. I'd have to be a pretty big moron to not be able to do that, but I can't make like giant leaps forward and giant leaps back. But what I can do is I can move left and right really easy. When I'm in this stance, left, right are super natural to me. And of course, moving forward and moving backwards are all options too, but I can really crush left and right if my feet are a little bit more squared. When I'm a little bit more bladed, left and right is definitely not as easy. For me to step this way, I have to do this. For me to step back this way, I have to do this, which again, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that it's going to be a little bit less efficient. But what I can do is I can move forward and I can move backwards really efficiently in this stance, okay? Front, back, when we're in a squared stance, left, right. So again, I'm going to use those like very, very far on the exaggerated side so you guys can understand that, but I never mean that something is one way. That's never the case. Everything is on a spectrum and on a continuum, and you guys can like figure out on your own how you want things to be, but these are like more or less rules of thumb. Cool, so let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages in being in a squared stance, okay? Some of the advantages to being in a squared stance, and because we're not going to talk about hand position right now, we'll talk about it a little bit, you know, in a few minutes or whenever this is over. Let's talk about it in a way where our hands are going to be in more of a closed guard, okay, versus a long guard like this. Like I said, we'll get into it in a minute. But when I'm in a squared stance, one of the advantages is that this is a fairly simple way to stand. And simple is definitely good. I don't want to get caught up in like thinking that like the more complex things are, the more that they're going to work. Like that's not the truth, especially if you're just a beginner. Like in the beginning phases of learning how to fight, things don't need to be complex. And even towards the end of it, things don't need to be complex in order for you to be really good at them. So this being a very simple stance is a good thing. That's supposed to be complementary, okay? So when we're in a squared stance, pretty simple. I have access to all of my weapons. I have access to my right leg, I have access to my left leg, I have access to my hooks, my uppercuts, and all of my straights, okay? That's a big deal. Write that down, okay? When we're in a squared stance, access to all the weapons is a really big deal. Versus, and we'll talk about it in a minute too, in a bladed stance, I don't have as much access to all of my weapons. If someone's in front of me and they step a little bit that way, I don't really have my hook anymore. I have my straights. If they're staying a little bit more in front of me, then I have a little bit more access. But right now, like my left leg, unless I like am throwing kicks kind of more in like a taekwondo way, I don't have as much access, and they're not as easily digestible as if I were in a squared stance. So that's a really important point. Another advantage, like I just talked about, is being able to move left and right, okay? The caveat to that is that you don't really get to move front and backwards very well, but left and right is super important to know how to do, and it's really important in understanding how you want to make your fighting look. When you're stepping left and right, that can make for like a really cool, almost like Tyson look, or like a Petr Yan style of fighting, where it's more left and right and it's a lot less backwards. And a lot of people do this like really well, and I think that it's a really, really cool way to do things. Although it isn't the way that I necessarily do them all the time, that doesn't mean that it's not really awesome. Some of the disadvantages of this is if I'm in this very simple stance, where I'm in a squared stance, I am giving a lot of access to like where it hurts to get hit in my body, okay? In a bladed stance, like, I'm more or less protected like this, okay? Like, one, we're not really allowed to hit each other in the spine or in the back of the head, even though everyone kind of does. And you have to, like, really, really do it in order for the ref to say anything, which is its whole other issue on its own. But when you're in a bladed stance, you're more or less, like, protecting half of your body by just making it face a direction that isn't a direction where most people are going to attack from. When I'm in a squared stance, I'm giving you like all of the things that hurt, like my solar plexus, my liver, kind of like these rounder shots on both of my sides. I'm giving you the front of my face. I'm kind of letting you hit around my ears. I'm not really protecting one side of my body better than the other one, okay? What it does do, though, is that it kind of gives me an ability to block. It gives me an ability to throw all of my attacks, which is definitely a good thing. So the disadvantage is that I'm giving a lot of my targets up. An advantage is that because I'm doing that, I also have a lot of access to throw most of the attacks that is in like a common arsenal of strikers, meaning like straight punches, hooks, uppercuts, knees, round kicks, teeps, and all of that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about some techniques that are going to favor the more squared stance versus the bladed stance. The more squared stance is definitely a lot more digestible. It's a lot more straightforward. No pun intended. You're not even going to laugh at that? Okay, whatever. The more squared stance is, let's talk about, you got me distracted now. Let's talk about some techniques that are actually going to help with that, okay? First thing that we're going to talk about, we'll almost always talk about defense first because it's more important, okay? Like, it's just flat out more important. Let me go on a little side spiel real quick, okay? Right now, striking is taught in the way that karate was taught a lot of years ago in terms of katas, okay? So right now, like, everyone's on Instagram posting videos of, like, let's go 1, 1, 2, pull 2, slip, hook, cross, slip, cross, hook, yeah. 1, 1, 2, pull, cross, hook, slip, hook, cross, boom. Like, that shit is not cool, okay? That is like a kata. You're better off just doing that on the bag instead of wasting your coach's time, in my opinion, okay? There's definitely a place for it. I'm not going to knock it so hard to where I'm not saying that it's not important, but, like, god damn, like, is everyone so obsessed with looking cool on Instagram that, like, that's the things that they, like, want to boast about? That's not cool, okay? What's cool is being defensive, being safe, and not getting knocked the fuck out, okay? And that's what we're always going to talk about first, is our defense. So, in a squared stance, when we talk about head movement, okay, we're going to talk about it in terms of, again, like this continuum, okay? So, I like moving my body in ways where I don't have to positionally give up one of my sides. So what I mean by that is if Elias throws a jab at me and I slip like this and I face you and I'm in this type of position, I can, like, kind of fire some of my techniques, but I definitely don't have access to all of them, okay? Like, throwing a hook from here, if I'm even a little bit taller, would be like a little bit strange. Throwing like a lead uppercut is definitely kind of strange. And then throwing like a left kick is a little bit strange. So the more you commit your body in terms of when you're moving your head, or in terms of a lot of things, but we'll talk about it in this context. When you're moving your head, the commitment level you should try to make minimal, okay? Because you're giving access to more of your weapons by making it minimal. What I mean by that is if Elias throws his jab, like I said, and I slip like this, I've pretty much taken off of half of my body. Elias does not need to worry about really getting hit on the left side if I'm this committed, okay? Not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that if you can do it a different way, try to do it a different way. Objective 1 is to not get hit by the jab. Objective 2 is to try to not get, or don't get hit by the jab, but also maintain a position in your body where you can still defend yourself and you can still attack with most of your weapons, okay? So if you have to accomplish one by really committing your body, that's an okay thing to do. It's better than getting punched in the face, okay? Unless you're, of course, doing something where, like, I'm unsafe like this, and I'm really committing out of the way like this in a way where I can get hit with something even harder in the second attack. That's the only time that it's really not okay. So, when I slip the punch, I try to do it more or less with my feet, okay? And that can mean stepping my feet, or that can mean rocking in my feet. Okay, when I rock in my feet, I still have access to my left side, not as much as if I slip like this. If I step in my feet, I even have more access to my left side than if I rock in my feet. But of course, when you're moving your head, most of the time, you need to have a little bit of an incorporation of a twist or some type of rock in your weight to get your head off of that line, okay? And the reason that that's important is, one, you obviously don't want to get hit in the head, but two, it's like realistic, okay? Like very rarely are you going to see people, this would be actually really cool if you could fight like this, throw two at me. If I was like boom, boom, like that would be fucking awesome. But it's like kind of not that realistic because you are just like a human in like an ape body that can only move so fast and your eyes can only react to things so quickly. So you do kind of have to commit a little bit, but the amount that you're committing can change all the time, okay? So don't get caught up in the right and wrong, and Corey's explaining this like I shouldn't rotate my shoulders. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is just giving you guys ideas, and you guys can take them however you guys want them, okay? So when we're slipping, try to not super mega commit with your shoulders. If you have to, like I said, fine. Try not to. So when Elias throws his jab, I want to rock a little bit and take ideally 2 steps so I'm back into my same position. When he jabs, boom, I take my 2 steps. Now I'm at a little bit of an angle here, okay? This is going to be for a different instructional, but the angle is important because it limits the attacks that Elias can throw on me, right? Like if me and Elias are standing here and I step like this, I don't really need to worry about Elias starching me with like a jab anymore if I'm way over here. I also like have a lot of time to react to his right hand, which is also good. So that's, you know, in like a super easy, simple way to say it, that's kind of what angles does a little bit. But we'll get into that in the advantages course that I have written a couple videos down the line. So when Elias throws his jab, boom, and I slip like this. My position is like this. I haven't moved anything. This is super ideal. I can throw my left hand, I can throw my right hand, I could throw a body shot, I could throw whatever I want. So when you're moving your head, do your best to not overcommit, do your best to not undercommit and then like get hit. Try to find somewhere in the middle, but understand that that is how it works. Elias throws his jab at me, boom. Throws his cross, boom. When I slip the cross, this is like, I'm like closing off this whole side. Why would I do that on purpose? Not really closing off this side, okay? Throws his cross, boom, step in, jab, boom, step in, step in, step in. So when I'm moving my head, it's important to incorporate your footwork while you're doing that. It's not just some bullshit that you see like on the katas and all of that stuff where you're just going like this, okay? Let's talk about countering the jab with some type of slip. I almost don't even want to call them slip. I want to call them head movements because I think it just helps with the terminology. I'm not slipping the punch as much as I'm moving my head out of the way and sometimes my body out of the way so that I can attack afterwards. Let's go over a super simple way to do this, okay? Which I'm sure if you've been training for any amount of time, like you've probably learned this, but we're going to talk about it anyways. For the beginners out there, we'll get more advanced, don't worry. But Elias throws. When I slip, I'm in my body, or I'm in my stance. Sometimes I say in my body because my position is still really good. And then we're going to go cross hook on our counter, okay? The reason being, when I step, I'm typically a little bit more loaded on this side, so this is going to be the faster, harder punch. Boom. Not a mega complex idea. When I'm like this, I could throw this a little bit harder, so throw that first. Punches, I slip, boom, boom. He throws the other punch, same idea. I try to get my body out of the way. I'm a little bit more loaded on this side. I throw my hook cross. Slip, boom, hook cross. He throws his jab, boom, boom, boom. Cross, boom, boom. I do my best to not do this. I do my best to do this. Boom, 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 boom. That way I'm not committing a ton on my body. Another thing that you're definitely going to need to know how to do when you're in a squared stance, because you don't have that forward and backwards movement down as much, the straight things you're going to need to be able to move out of the way of or parry and block them, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the round things, you're gonna need to be able to use your guard for, okay? The opposite of something like that would be if me and Elias are fighting and he throws a hook and I get my body out of the way, that's great, okay? In a squared stance, because you can't move your body as well like this, it might be a little bit more beneficial for you to try to learn how to block and counter, or at least give that a little bit more time, okay? So when I'm in a squared stance and Elias hooks, getting myself backwards is, like I said, I can still do it, but I might invest a little bit more time by blocking here like this, okay? And being able to just take shots and then fire back. Of course, we'll start simple and then we'll get more complex. When Elias hits me, I want to set my weight. I keep everything closed on this side so that nothing tricky can happen. Guys are really like good with their kicks and like throwing punches and kicks, or kicks and punches like pretty simultaneously, like almost like a 1-2. So you seal off the side that you're getting hit on. When Elias punches, I block. Because this is the side of his face that's most open, I'm going to go cross hook, okay? If you've been training for any amount of time, not a super complex idea. Does right hook, boom, I block, I sit into a little bit, I cover everything. I don't just cover like this, because I've been hit up here and it like still hurts and sometimes it can still wobble you weird. You cover everything, you keep your elbow really tight. He punches, boom, I block. This is the side of the face that he's open on. That's the side that I'm going to lead with. So when he punches on the left side, I block, cross hook. When he punches on the right side, I block, hook, cross. A couple more. Boom, 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 boom. I also want to set my weight so I don't get knocked off balance. Well, it doesn't happen as much in a squared stance. That's an advantage. When I get hit with round shots and I'm in a squared stance, if I don't set my weight and Elias is super strong, he knocks me off balance. I don't have an ability to counter. When he hits, boom, I lean into a little bit, I hit back. He punches, boom, I block, I hit back. Boom, boom. Okay, super simple idea, all right? So we have our head movement, which is getting ourselves off the line, okay? That is in accordance or in opposition to someone throwing straight punches, okay? And then we have our blocks, which defend us from round punches, okay? The other thing that we're going to talk about being in a squared stance is, again, these like straight attacks, okay? Because more or less I'm pretty protected from like a lot of round things. Just me being in this stance, I can balance myself a lot better. When I get hit on this side, doesn't move me as much as maybe if I'm in this stance, I get hit here and I fall off this direction because my feet aren't in a place where I can keep balance. So in a squared stance, I'm fairly protected from these round shots. But the straight things are going to be what kill you, okay? Or not kill you, but like you need to pay attention to. So we move our body out of head movement, okay? We block like this with the punches and the kicks, okay? And then we need to parry the straights and parry the teeps, okay? So when Elias goes to throw a jab at me, if I don't feel like moving my head because I don't feel like I have access to it, it's hard for me to try to stay in a squared stance. If I don't feel like being super mobile, maybe because I want to be a little bit more rooted and like crack this dude, I can always parry. So Elias throws. When I parry, my hand doesn't come off my face a ton, okay? I just use this as like a deflector more than like a stopper. So I'm not trying to make it so that I'm like catching Elias's punch as much as I'm just trying to make it move a little bit out of the way, okay? Throw it right at my forehead. Again, boom. It does not take much. Try to smoke me. Smoke me. Do it again. Boom. It really does not take much. If something's really accelerated at you, you don't need to move it out of the way a ton. You just need to dink it off of your hand to make it move. So just here like this. You also need to understand that if that person has any level of experience, what they're going to look for next is to try to get around that hand. And that's either going to be in the way where Elias is going to like jab, head kick, boom, other side, same side, boom. Because if I'm parrying like this, boom, and my hand's out like this, and he kicks, not good for me. He's also either going to feint at me, get me to parry, and then go around with a hook. So you need to be prepared for those things. That doesn't mean that parrying is bad. It doesn't mean anything like that. It means that everything that you do has a counter to it. You have to know those counters if you want to be really, really good, okay? So when Elias jabs, I'm going to parry, For now, we'll go with our cross hook just because it's a little bit easier. He's typically more open on the side that he's throwing with. Again, he's more open on this side. So after I parry, boom, I'm going to go cross and then hook after. He'll jab, I parry, cross hook. Don't do that, okay? That's going to get you in a lot of trouble. Boom, tiny parry, cross hook. You don't need to crack someone super hard in order for it to be like an effective attack. When he crosses, same idea. Boom, I just barely deflect this thing out of the way. I keep my head down in case it does make it through. I get hit in my forehead and not in like the things that hurt, like my teeth or my nose or my eyes. After here, boom, we'll parry, and then because that side of his face is open, we're gonna go hook cross, okay? Boom, hook cross. Boom, hook cross. He could throw whatever hand he wants. Boom, parry, cross hook. Boom, hook cross. Boom, cross hook. Boom, cross hook. Nope, didn't move. He tried to get me. That was impromptu. Nice, dude. You're being a good partner. You're making your money's worth. Okay, so that's the point of that. Okay, let's go over one more thing just because it's important to go over kicks, of course, also as well. So countering punches with kicks is sometimes super difficult, especially if the person is like really, really good at smoking their kicks, okay? So if Elias throws a kick on me, and again, I'll try to stand more square, and you're like, okay, and he kicks, a lot of the time, like the kick is so hard that it knocks me off balance and it's really hard for me to counter with my punches, okay? It also can be a little bit tricky because everyone kicks so fucking weird. Everyone kicks differently for the most part. So their head flies into different spots, and like while you're in the middle of a fight and like getting blasted with a kick, and I have to think about like where his head is, it can get very difficult to try to counter him, okay? Whereas I know if Elias is going to kick me, unless he's doing like some weird jumpy shit, if Elias is going to kick me, his leg is going to be in one place. So a lot of the times when I'm countering kicks, it's with kicks on that same leg or on his body, okay? Trying to find the head, like I said, is just hard because everyone kicks so weird. So when Elias throws right round kick, that leg is going to be there. So after we block like this, not like this, not like this, because you're getting hit in the body sucks just as bad as getting hit in the head sometimes. You block like this, everything's closed. Boom, I'm going to counter with the low kick. I really don't care what side low kick, just feel whichever one feels better in your body. Sometimes it's this one, sometimes it's this one. If he kicks with the left leg, same idea. I block, I kick. I block, I kick. That leg is not going to move as much as his head is. If I want to counter on his body, that's cool too. Whatever side, don't matter. Boom. I can do that too. His body is not going to move as much as his head. So those are more or less like the defensive techniques, and that extends way past just being in a squared stance, but those are some like really simple ones being in a squared stance. Again, just to recap, we have our head movement, Elias jabs. Boom. I move with my body. I try not to commit that much. Come back with my counters. If he throws a straight and I want to parry, I come with the punches. I parry, I come with the punches. If he kicks me, I block, I kick that leg that I know is going to be there. He kicks, boom, I kick that leg that I know is going to be there. If he throws a hook, I brace myself on the side, that way I'm able to counter and I don't get knocked off balance. Go ahead again. Boom, I hit him on the same side that his face is typically going to be open on. One more time on that side. Boom, bam, bam. So those are our counters for that. So now that we've learned to kind of more or less defend ourselves from some of the things being in a squared stance, let's talk about how to do it or how to be offensive in our squared stance, okay? I know that I'm going to say this every time, but that's because I think it's really important to say. That doesn't mean that these are the only things that work in a squared stance or a bladed stance. Maybe that'll be the last time that I say it, but I just want that point to be really clear to you guys, okay? Sidestepping, okay, is going to be our friend because left and right is really easy to do in a squared stance. Because moving left and right is a lot easier in our stance, you can really take advantage of that, okay? So Tyson kind of does a version of this, and I always use Tyson, but there's a ton of other really good examples. The problem with me is I'm horrible with names. I'm horrible with names of musicians, with movies, with lyrics, with everything. I'm really bad at details, but I'm really good with like concepts and ideas and seeing things in my head, but super not good at like communicating like who it was that did this, blah, blah, blah. So I apologize for that. But when I'm in a squared stance, Tyson more or less did this movement a lot, and it became really popular because Mike Tyson was knocking people the fuck out. But it's a really good idea whether or not Tyson was knocking people out or not. When I step to my left, boom, I'm off of the direct line of someone, which is a good thing, okay? So if me and Elias are fighting each other, and I know I briefly mentioned this with angles, but when I step off to the side of Elias, I limit what Elias can throw on me. I don't need to be nervous about all of his weapons because that can become overwhelming. When I take an angle, I'm usually, I'm in a safer position because typically he needs to adjust in order to hit me again. Can you go back? But also because I'm taking away some of the things that he can hit me with, like definitely not going to jab me unless he resets and then jabs me, okay? That's why angles work. So when we sidestep, we'll do it in a way where we're just left, right, and then going right, left. And I'll give you guys a drill for that in a minute. But left, right, right, left. That's what I mean by sidestepping, okay? So if me and Elias are fighting, and I throw a combination on Elias, and I want to continue my combination, here I'm playing with fire, okay? I'm more or less rolling the dice to a certain extent. If I want to quit rolling the dice, I get out of range where Elias can attack me, or I step in a way where Elias has to adjust to me in order to further attack me with everything. Can he hit me with some stuff? Go ahead. Yes. 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 Kind of. But he can't hit me with everything. That's the point. So I can limit those things. So when we sidestep, again, we'll just do it pretty simply for the first couple points. But when I step to my left, left, right, I keep myself in position. I don't just step my left foot because now I'm in a not great position. I step both my feet. I return to my position, and we'll go hook cross on this side. Bum, bum. Okay? When we step right, on this side, if you want to get closer, you're going to have to step your foot a little bit closer to him. Boom, to where I'm like this for a second. But then when this one comes, I'm back into my normal stance. And then we'll go cross hook, okay? Again, boom, cross hook. Again, boom, cross hook. So that's what I mean by side steps. So a way that we're going to practice this is by doing numbers. And I'm sure that if you belong to a gym that you have some sort of number system, every gym has like a little bit of a different version of it. If you're on your own, then just practice throwing a combination and then stepping off to a side, or side stepping is the term that we were using. Throw a combination, sidestep, and then throw your hook cross. So what this looks like with a round of numbers is if Elias calls a 1-2, I hit my 1-2. I don't care which side you step towards, to be honest. It can be to the right, it can be to the left. There's no right or wrong. After I 1-2, boom, I step myself off, I get to a side, and then I'm going to throw my cross hook. When I throw my 3 or whatever else I want to throw, 2, 3, and I want to go to my left, I sidestep myself off, I throw my hook cross, okay? Super simple idea. Let's do a couple numbers, whatever you want to call. Jab, boom, stepping off, hook cross.
Cross hook.
Cross hook, boom, boom, stepping off, hook cross.
2.
Boom, boom, stepping off, cross hook.
Hook cross.
Boom, boom, stepping off, cross hook. So pretty simple idea, but this squared stance is really tailored for you to step off to the side and being able to attack people by cutting them in half and making it so that you have more of an advantage. Let's talk about the body shot because this is something that I do really, really well, okay? The liver is on my right side of the body, and it hurts like hell to get hit in the liver, okay? I'm sure that you guys, if you felt that, you definitely know that, but I'm kind of known for hitting the body shot on the liver side because I've had major success with that, especially I grew up like smaller, so when I was learning martial arts, like I didn't always have like the power to like hit people really hard in the head when I was like pissed off and sparring and wanting to like hurt them, which happens sometimes, especially when you're like 18, 19 years old. But I had some power hitting to the body because it was just, it works in a way where the more precise you are and the more unpredictable your timing and the less that they see it and the less that they're braced, it favors you. Opposed to getting in the head, sometimes that's not always the case. So let's talk about my body shot. which, by the way, took me forever to fucking learn. I would watch all kinds of Dutch kickboxers all the time to try to learn how to do it, but it was like me fucking it up so many times in order for me to learn it. So I do feel like I'm pretty good at having that body shot. It's ended like a lot of fights for me. It's a really good way to hurt people without being like a giant dick and like knocking them out. So really important to learn, even if you're just a hobbyist and you're sparring with people that maybe you don't like sparring with. Okay. First, where I aim, okay? And the reason that we're going to do this in a squared stance is because I'm a little bit more balanced in my squared stance, okay? I know that I've done it a lot of the times, like in fights, more in like a bladed stance in the way that I personally stand a little bit more, but that isn't how I learned it. I used to stand a lot more squared when I was just a kickboxer, and in order to learn it and not like skip a bunch of steps, because you can't really skip steps, so the way that I'm doing it is a lot different than the way that I'm going to show it, only because I'm like way down the chain of like when it's okay to do it, when it's not okay to do it. It's like jaywalking. Like jaywalking's an okay thing to do. Most of the time you're not going to get hit by a car, but you have to know like when's an appropriate time to jaywalk. Like you can jaywalk across the street to get to the gas station. You don't jaywalk across like a really heavily trafficked highway. Okay, so I'm okay jaywalking on the heavily trafficked highway just because I've done it so many times. So when you watch my fights, don't, what's that saying? I'm really bad with sayings. Don't do as I do as I say, not as I do, okay? So beginning process of learning the body shot. We're in a squared stance, okay? I want to get my body to a safe spot. That means stepping outside of his shoulders just a little bit. Can I get hit here? Go ahead, hit me. Yes, I still can, okay? Am I safer here than here? Yes, okay? But you're still in danger. So when I take my 2 steps, it's just a tiny side step. I take my 2 steps. I don't want to get myself too close. Everyone thinks with body shots that they need to be like this close in order to hurt people. That's not the case, okay? I like throwing my body shot at the end of the punch. So unless you have like littler arms, then you definitely need to get closer. But when I'm here like this is almost even a little bit too close. But where I'm aiming is this gap where Elias's elbow isn't touching his body, okay? And almost everyone makes this mistake, okay? I step, this is where I'm aiming. And the way that I throw this isn't round like this. That's definitely a good way to hurt someone, but that's not how I throw the body shot. When I throw the body shot, I throw it up and in, and I aim for right underneath his elbow. So when me and Elias are here, I tiny sidestep. I don't overcommit. This makes it telegraphed, and it's just like too much. If Elias hits me here, I'm so off balance that I won't be able to do the punch anyways. I tiny step. I try to shovel this underneath this. You can even make it tinier if you want. Yeah. Boom. That's where I'm trying to hit. When I rotate, this has to stay up. Don't throw it like this, okay? You'll get knocked out. Don't do that. I load a little bit. I throw right under, and the motion is like this. Boom. It's not like this. It's not like this. It's a little under and a little up. Left, right. Boom. Hit the body shot. You get exit off to your left, or you can come back and out if you're done. Again, boom, body shot, out, or off to the side. Really good attack for a squared stance fighter. The last offensive technique that we'll talk about in a squared stance, because they are a lot more traditional versus a bladed stance, is our kicks, okay? When we're in a squared stance, we have access to most of the traditional types of kicks. And what I mean by that is like American traditional. Like in a bladed stance, a side kick might be like a traditional kick to you, depending on like how you grew up, where you grew up, all of that stuff. But for like more traditional K1 style kickboxing, even Muay Thai, I would argue that like the round kick and the teep are really traditional kicks, and they work really well with the squared stance. Opposed to if I'm in a bladed stance, teeping can kind of be weird, especially on my front leg. That's why like people side kick there more. My like switch kick isn't going to be as good when I'm in a bladed stance, because it's like just feels awkward, and because like I have to do this giant big motion before I switch kick when I'm in a bladed stance, where when I'm in a squared stance it could be a tiny switch and then a kick, so it's much faster. So just real quick, when I'm kicking Elias, I'll just give you my spiel on kicks because, like I said, you guys are here for a reason. You guys want to learn how I do things. It's not always going to be the way that everyone else does things, but it's going to be the way that I do things, and I'm doing pretty good. So, me and Elias are partners. When I round kick, okay, this is one of those commitment things. If I commit really hard to the round kick and I want to blast Elias with the round kick, that's okay, but just understand that there's caveats to everything. So when I kick Elias with my round kick, boom, and I really want to blast him, I have to rotate on this down foot, okay? I'm in a squared stance. I have like really easy access to this. I can kick very quickly, okay? I rotate all the way. The more I rotate, the harder the kick is going to be for the most part. Boom, like this. Some of you guys have super flexible hips because I've been coaching for a lot of years now too. Some of you guys have super flexible hips where you guys don't need to rotate on the down foot in order for you guys to like really incorporate all of your hip. That makes me feel like I'm going to tear every single thing in my knee. So I would definitely highly recommend rotating whether or not you can or can't have that level of flexibility. Rotate on the down foot or you're going to blow everything out in your knee, okay? Important. All right, so we're here. If I want to blast Elias hard, I rotate more. If I'm more concerned with my position, because the more I rotate, the more I'm out of position, even if it's for millimeters or milliseconds of a second. The more I rotate, the longer it takes for me to get back. If I rotate less, maybe like a half or a quarter, I can get myself back into a stance a lot quicker, but I'm not usually going to have the same amount of oomph. Power isn't king. Keeping yourself safe and not getting knocked the fuck out is king, okay? And that happens with position. If you have an opportunity to blast the person, go for it. But for the most part, almost always err on the side of being defensive, okay? So if I want to blast Elias, I rotate, boom, I throw my kick, I come back into my stance. If I want to be more positionally sound, I blast it and I come back up. Some people call this the three-quarter kick. Comes more like this, less like this. Here's my round kick. Here's my three-quarter kick. I just rotate less. It keeps me in better position. Or I guess it like puts me back into a better position a lot quicker. Okay? On the left side, when I switch kick, same idea. I just reset. Boom. I switch my feet. If I want to blast Elias, I rotate all the way. If I want to keep it a little bit more safe, I just switch, flick it up, three-quarter kick, comes at this type of angle. And then I get myself back so that I'm safe again. Okay, right side, rotate, three-quarter kick, up, come back into a stance quicker. Same thing on the other side. When I switch, I lift, I set, and that's where my kick is really getting started, is right when this sets. That's where I'm getting a lot of my drive in my hips. Boom. I can blast that, come back into my stance, or I can switch, throw a three-quarter, come back into my stance because it gets me back a lot faster into a safer position, okay? Teeps. Teeps are almost the same, except teeps aren't really there to like really like stun someone or like knock someone out, although you can. When me and Elias are fighting, most of the time, I'm just trying to keep Elias away from me when I'm teeping. So right side, super simple. I'm going to throw this in a way where I'm still using my hips. Again, a committed thing though. I don't want to just do like this. That would be like if I like just kicked Elias like this. Like that's not going to do anything. When I kick Elias, I don't want to extend so hard where if Elias moves backwards, I like throw and I'm off balance. But I do want to throw in a way where it has some gusto, but I also get back into position. And that's going to depend on a number of factors. Like I'm kind of a lanky, longer guy. So if I were to like rip everything that I do, I'm going to be getting myself back into position like a lot, which is why I keep like my movements a little bit smaller, just because my limbs are a little bit longer, okay? So I'm throwing my teep. I come up onto this toe. Boom. I try to hit with the ball of my foot. I still use some hip, like my hip is finishing here. It's not shallow like this. If you need to rotate on the down foot, you can. Like I said, if your hips are going like this and your foot isn't moving, you're putting your knee at risk because that pressure and that compensation has to happen somewhere, and usually it's going to happen on your knee. So when I teep, I lift, I push kick, I come back into my stance. I'm in a squared stance, boom, back into my stance. This is good for bladed stance too. Boom, It's just going to take longer to get back into position. We'll talk about that in a minute. But lift, teep, back into my stance. If you want to teep them in the face, that's cool too. Just make sure that you're not like Sparta, okay? When I do the left side, it's the same thing. I switch my feet, boom. I throw my push kick. I come back into my stance. I don't wrench it so hard where I'm going to get myself out of position. I switch, teep, back into my stance. Okay, so the 4 kicks, the simple ones, the traditional ones. I round kick, I'm in a squared stance. Boom, back into my stance. 3/4 kick, a little bit more up. Come back into my stance a lot quicker. Switch kick, boom, hard. Switch kick, 3/4, a little bit tinier. Then my teeps. Boom, I pop him off. I switch, I pop him off. One more time all the way through. Round, hard, 3/4, less. Round, hard, 3/4, less. Teep, switch, teep. All right, so I'll give you guys a couple drills that you can either do with a partner, or you could do by yourself, or you could do on the back, okay? The first one that we're gonna do is, I didn't really know what to call it, because like I said, I'm not very good with like names and all of that stuff, or what things are called. That's like some smart people shit. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in like the way that things actually work and all of that, not so much like what they're called. So anyways, we're gonna call this the Tyson drill just because it's left and right, and it kind of looks like Tyson, I guess, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to have a taped line somewhere on the floor. We don't have one here, but let's imagine that there's a taped line, okay? When I'm on the center of that taped line, and by me, I mean like my head on the center of that taped line, I'm in the line of fire. That's what we're pretending, okay? The drill is going to be when I step left, I take my right foot, I touch it onto the line. When I step right, my left foot touches the line. That way, I'm always off to the side. This is super natural if you're a squared stance fighter. If I'm bladed, this gets like real weird, okay? So we're not gonna do it as a bladed guy. Squared guy, my foot is on the taped line, boom, I touch my right foot on there. I touch my left foot on there. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, have seen this. Sometimes they put like a rope in between. You roll underneath. I'm never going to talk about rolling, because in kickboxing that can get you in a lot of trouble, and in MMA can get you in a lot of trouble. That doesn't mean that it's not okay to do sometimes. Just know that that can definitely be like a thing that gets you in trouble. So we're not going to do it with rolls. If you want to commit a shoulder, you could treat it like it's a slip and commit just a tiny bit on your shoulders. You can go forward, backwards, however you want to do, but left, right. This is the drill here, okay? If I want to go forward, I just do it as I'm going forward. If I want to move backwards, I just do it as I'm moving backwards. Every time my toe just touches on the line. If you want to make it a little bit more complicated, when you get to a side, you ground. That idea of grounding to the floor so you can punch with some power. We're on this side. We already talked about sidestepping, so we'll keep it the same. Left, right, hook, cross. When I go the other way, boom, cross, hook. And now I'm working on grounding my feet as I'm doing the same drill, so I'm not just floating in the air like this, which is great. But if you want to hit with some power, you have to drive your feet into the floor. Boom, boom. If you want to make that more complex, we'll add in angle changes, okay? So this is my spiel on angles too, just real quick. There's railroad angles, and then there's clock angles. So what I mean by that is if I'm in front of you and I take a step and my shoulders are still facing the same direction more or less, I consider that a railroad step, okay, because I'm going off of the tracks. I throw my hook cross, boom. These are railroad steps, okay? The other ones are clocks, where I'm rotating on my lead foot in order to position my power in a direction where it's most efficient. So what I mean by that, actually, can I use you real quick? So what I mean by that is if me and Elias are fighting each other, if I rotate right like this, so say I take a step off to the side and I rotate. Has anyone ever seen a fight that looks like this, where I'm trying to get an advantage? No, it looks super stupid, okay? And the reason is because my power is pointed in this direction. I've over-rotated myself. Sometimes this is really hard for people to like conceptually understand. I don't really know why, but like when I do teach this to people, I think that they get so caught up in like the actual like mechanic of the move that they forget what the point of the move is, which is to step off to the side, point my energy and my power at a direction, and then be able to attack on that direction, okay? So don't get caught up in the mechanics. It's not about that. But a clock angle is one where I step and then I do more of a clock motion, like an old clock, not like a new clock like an iPhone. I'm talking like a Rolex or something. You rotate like the dial. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dial. I point my power at Elias and I'm good, okay? If I do it the other direction, it doesn't necessarily always happen with my lead leg. It more happens like on this step, like as I adjust, boom, like if my opponent was here. As I adjust, I point my power at Elias. I would still consider that a clock angle because you're adjusting your shoulders, okay? So both are okay. Thank you. I'll call you back in a minute. We're here like this. The way that we can incorporate that in is you guys can be doing these side steps, okay, or these Tyson steps, whatever we want to call them. And then whenever you want, you can step, boom, rotate like a clock, and then do the exact same thing. Boom, boom, boom. Step, rotate like a clock, and do the same thing. Now I'm working my track angles. Here, I'm working my clock angles. Boom, 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 boom. Rotate, okay? Most of the time, I'll only go to the left because this step is like not as common because it's a little bit more challenging. It's like a little bit more intricate, a little bit past like what I do, so I'm not even going to try to explain it. But when you're sidestepping, you can always rotate that direction too. That's completely fine. But play with that. Another way to make it a lot more complex is if you wanted to add clock angles while you're switching your stance. So what that's going to look like is you have this sidestep motion going, and when you're ready, you'll sidestep, and instead of bringing this foot here, you're going to sidestep and bring your foot into the opposite stance. Okay, that adds for a little bit more of a dynamic look. I don't want to get super into switching stances quite yet. We will down the road, but actually in this video we'll get to it. So I don't want to get super crazy about it right now, but that's another way that you can make it more advanced. And then you can do the same thing in this opposite stance. When you're ready, this foot steps, I swing, and now I'm in my traditional stance again. Boom, same idea, step, swing, boom, boom, step, swing, boom, boom, step, swing, boom, boom. So that's our Tyson drill. Elias, can I use you? Now let's get into a lot of the things that we already did with our offensive and defensive techniques in a squared stance and just add numbers and punches just to make it a little bit more realistic. Okay, so like I said, most of you guys are gonna have a numbers type of system like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a ton of YouTube videos on that. I'll let you guys watch those ones. I'll leave the more important stuff for these videos. But me and Elias are partners. We'll start almost with anything that we just talked about in the squared stance. You can just add at the end of your numbers, okay? It's a really good way to practice like a really specific skill. So what I mean is we'll talk about head movement first. We'll go through all of them. Don't get super caught up in like I said, like the mechanics of each one as much as just having the idea so that you guys can work as much on your own as you want, whatever specific skill you want. All that we're doing is we're adding some offense on the beginning part and then practicing a technique at the end part, okay? So Elias, he calls a number. We'll do head movement first. He calls 3. I hit my 3. He throws a punch at me. Boom, I move my head out the way, and then we throw that same counter that we already talked about. He throws 2. Boom, boom, he throws a punch. I move my body, or I sidestep, or I slip. However much, again, you want to commit is fine. 2. Boom, I move. I throw my 2-punch counter. If it's a 4, I hit my 4, I wait for him to punch, I move out of the way, I throw my cross hook. 3, 2, 3, move my head. Here, it looks a lot like sidestepping, but it's kind of supposed to if you do your head movement right. The other way to do it is by parrying, of course. So Elias calls 2. I hit my 2, he punches at me, I parry, I counter with what we already talked about before. 1, boom, he punches, I parry, hook cross. 4, 2, 3, 4, he punches, I parry, cross hook. Same thing works for blocks. He calls 3, he punches, I sit down on that side, I punch. Whatever number.
2.
Bam, bam, block, cross hook.
Jab.
Bam, bam, bam.
Cross across.
Boom, 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 boom. Blocking, now we can do it with kicks. 3, Elias kicks me. Boom, I block. I kick that down leg because that's almost always going to be there.
2.
Blocked. He came back into a little bit of a different stance. If I was going to do this live, go 2. I would like chop this before it was able to hit the ground. 2. Boom, boom. Or I would kick the outside of it. 2. Block. Boom. Couple more.
Cross.
Boom. Block. Bang.
Jab uppercut.
Boom. 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 That's for the kicks. Let's add in our own offense now. So I'll number, sidestep. Go ahead.
3.
Boom, boom. I sidestep. Bang, bang.
4.
Sidestep. Bang, bang.
Jab.
Boom. Boom, boom. That's sidestepping. Now let's round kick.
2.
Boom, boom. I finish on my right hand. Usually I kick on the left side afterwards because my hips are loaded. But if my position is really good already, I could fire on both sides, which is more ideal than doing it in like this really mechanical way. So after I 1, 2. If you're like really beginner, go for it. Kick on the left side. If you want to kick on either side, it really doesn't matter. Decide whether you want to rotate or 3/4 kick for the round. 2, 1, 2. I can switch. There I round kicked with some power. 1, 2. I switch. I 3/4 so that I'm a little bit less committed in my power, but more committed to my position. 3. Boom. Kick. Whatever.
Jab.
Boom. Boom.
4.
Boom. 3/4. 3. Switch. 3/4. Back into my stance. Now we'll do it with teeps.
2.
Boom, boom. I'm here. Teep.
Jab.
Boom. Teep.
4.
Teep.
3.
Boom.
Cross hook.
Boom.
Jab.
Boom.
1, 1, 2.
Boom. Makes sense? So that's how numbers more or less work. And that's our series on squared stance. Now let's move on to bladed. All right, let's get into being in a bladed stance now, okay? So our bladed stance, like we already talked about, is really good at moving ourselves forward and backwards, okay? I don't want you guys to still forget this idea of rooted and not rooted fighting because in boxing you see a lot of guys, they're bladed, you know, maybe not as much as like this, you know, but they're more or less pretty bladed, but they're really, really rooted to the floor, okay? The reason that they're able to do that in like some of the other sports, is specifically boxing, is because they don't really need to worry about their lead leg that much. Like in MMA, people can grab it, they can try to take you down with it, and they can kick it a lot, okay? So they can kind of get away with being a really grounded, bladed fighter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate into our other sports like kickboxing and definitely in MMA, okay? Doesn't mean that you can't do it, of course, but it definitely means that you have to do it differently. So most of the time when I see people in a bladed stance, they're not being the rooted guy. They're being a very floating guy or a bouncy guy, okay? That's really important to know because when you are in a bladed stance, you're giving up really obvious attacks, right? Like I'm standing like this. It's super obvious that someone's going to kick my leg. It's super obvious that someone's going to try to attack my leg. So I need to protect this thing because getting kicked in the leg is a big deal. Getting taken down is a big deal. You need to protect this thing, okay? And the best way to do that is just by being agile, okay? So usually when you're in a bladed stance in some of the more complicated and better arts than boxing, get mad at me if you want to about that, but in the better sports, the better combat sports than boxing, or the more real ones, that's going to piss a lot of people off, you're going to be a lot more bouncy, okay? And again, that's because you need to protect this leg from getting kicked and from it getting grabbed. The other obvious opening that's happening is this entire side where we don't punch like this, okay? We have like spinning back kicks, and we have attacks that do go in this direction and kind of more or less do go backwards in some way, you know, if that's the argument that you want to take it towards. But I need to protect this side usually, okay? And that can be with attacks like spinning stuff, but it also needs to just be by keeping someone in a line with me, so that they don't get moving behind me too much. Because a lot of these attacks where I have to spin or throw something backwards require like really big movements, and like the bigger the movement, the bigger the opening for them to be able to counter you, okay? Another advantage that we have when we're in a bladed stance, like we already talked about, is forward and backwards is big, okay? The reason that we're bouncy is because we need to protect this leg. I move forward and backwards really good. I'm making myself really agile while I'm in this stance typically. So we'll start pretty simple with the defensive techniques. Like I said, we're almost always going to talk about defensive stuff before we talk about offensive stuff. But like I just said, what we're trying to protect is people moving into a space where we can't defend ourselves. That's an important area to protect. And we also need to protect our lead leg by using typically a lot of in and out type of motion, okay? So the first thing that we'll do as far as the defensive technique goes is an L step, okay? When I'm standing really bladed like this, my ability to check outside low kicks is not really there, okay? If Elias kicks me in the outside of my leg when I'm in a bladed stance, for me to be able to check this, because my hips are facing this way, he goes, I need to get my shin all the way around so that I can block like this, okay? If I just go to lift and here, and Elias kicks the outside of my leg, my shin doesn't line up in that area. My shin is here. It's not out here. On the outside of your calf, it's really muscly and like sometimes fatty for some of you fat. No, I'm just kidding. It's sometimes fatty, but mostly it's pretty muscular, and that's why it hurts to get hit in, okay? In order for me to check a kick good, I want shin on shin. I want it to suck just as bad for Elias as it does for me. And that is not super realistic if I'm in a really bladed stance, because like I said, for me to be able to do that, I have to like really whip my leg around and like try to get him to clack my shin. And that's not, like I said, super realistic. So the way that we're going to get outside of this is just by L stepping, okay? My L step is I'm in a stance, my left leg goes to where my right leg is, my right leg goes out, and I make kind of this like L shape, okay? L, like this. Left goes to right, right goes out like an L. That's why it's called an L step. Pretty genius. All right, me and Elias partners. When he tries to kick my leg, when I go to get out of this, I just L step myself out of the way, okay? Obviously, I don't just L step, go ahead, and stay over here like this, okay? I want to like at least make it look like I'm about to attack afterwards. So when I L step, here I'm not out of position, but I'm not really super in great position according to Elias anymore. So when he throws, I want to adjust myself so that I'm back in this stance, okay? Or at least like facing him again with my power that we've already talked about. So Elias goes, I L step, I put myself right back into my bladed stance, but now I'm facing him with all of my attacks. Okay, that's a really easy idea, all right? When he goes to kick my lead leg, I L step myself out. If he goes to positionally try to take some ground by stepping towards my backside, go ahead, step over there, where I can't really use these anymore, I have to start like spinning and all of that stuff, which again is a really committed move, super deadly, like make for really cool badass knockouts, but really committed, and I really hate the idea of taking my eyes off of the person that I'm fighting. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it means that that commitment thing, like you're committing really hard when you do these, And by commitment, I mean like by your body position. It's going to take you a long time to get back into your stance typically because they are big movements. So if Elias is standing in front of me, and this is going to be super simple and stupid sounding, but when Elias steps off to that area, I can either L-step myself into a way where I'm facing him, or I can just circle, which everyone knows how to do, like this. The reason that I'm harping on this so much is because that area is a really important area to protect. If Elias gets close and in that area, I am in not the greatest position for stuff. Now I really have to either like start to think retreat and point my power at him, or point my position at him so that I'm safe, or I have to start thinking like, okay, he's going to keep going this way, I got to spinning something on him, okay? So that's important. That's how we protect this side and this lead leg. Elias tries to kick that leg, I L-step myself out. Elias goes to step, I L-step myself out. He goes to step, I circle myself out, okay? Pretty simple concept, but that's a really important thing to know how to do if you are going to stay in a bladed stance. The second way that we're going to defend ourselves, especially if someone's punching at our head and not our lead leg, is the obvious pull, okay? Really simple technique. I'm in my bladed stance, so I move in and out really, really well. I'm going to throw my jab. Boom, and we're just going to do this as part of the drill. You don't have to throw your jab. But when I throw my jab, Elias takes a swing at me. Boom, I move my feet out the way, and then we'll come back with our jab cross. Okay? Super simple technique. Not a lot to it, but because I'm bladed, slipping can sometimes get really sketchy. Our blocks sometimes can get a little bit sketchy because most of the time this is paired with a long guard, which means that like if I'm in a bladed stance and I try to stand with my hands like this just feels uncomfortable. Like it feels like if Elias takes a tiny step this way, go ahead, I can't see him as well anymore. That's usually the reason that this hand comes down and people fight with the longer guard when they are in a bladed stance. Can you take a step back? Here I can see Elias cool, but the second he steps off to the side, I can't see him as good. That's usually why I start to use this long guard, so I can start to see him, okay? So again, protecting myself like this and like using my slips and all of that stuff can just get sketchy because of the orientation of my body. Like when I'm like this, it's really hard for me to slip without stepping this foot, because when I step the foot now, I'm in a squared stance. Very different idea, okay? Whereas if Elias throws his right hand, I can like kind of step on the outside of this, okay? But it's really, like I said again, like I'm kind of entering into a squared stance, so it's not really a bladed stance anymore. If I was like forcing myself to stay in this exaggerated bladed stance and slip, like this can just get like a little bit weird and make me feel like I'm really off balance, just like how throwing longer combinations in a bladed stance can make you feel off balance. The same thing happens with the slips. And kind of the same thing happens with the blocks too. Because if Elias throws like a bomb of a left hook on me and I'm in a bladed stance, that's cool. I could definitely still like be grounded and all of that. But if he was going to knock me over, like try to push me over, Elias, like not really. Step over here and do it. Like I can't catch myself facing that direction. So if a force is coming in this direction like a hook he throws, a lot of the time it will knock me off balance, okay? Like I said, really exaggerated example, but this stuff happens a lot in the micro terms of combat and when you're fighting and when you're in like the heat of the moment. The exaggerated things kind of become really, really big identifiable things, and you want to be able to fix them while you're in the fight or previous to the fight or after the fight or whatever. So understanding these concepts is important, okay? That's why pulling out of the way and making someone miss is usually a better response for this type of bladed stance. So when I jab, boom, I move both my feet, I get out of the way from whatever Elias throws at me. When I come back, I throw my 1-2 and I keep myself really long. When I'm in a bladed stance and I'm close, this is like kind of okay, but again, I'm giving him a lot of this. And I don't really, like I don't have like a ton of options other than like here. I have some elbows and stuff, but the bladed stance is really good for having longer techniques. Okay, so I jab, boom, get myself out the way, jab, cross, jab, boom, get myself out the way, jab, cross, opposed to jab, blocking the hook, which like I said is still okay. You can definitely still do it, but if Elias bombs this hook and I'm a little not ready, it's going to knock me off balance when I'm in that bladed stance. The other way that we need to protect that lead leg of ours, because if Elias is a lefty, happens a little bit more if he's a lefty, can still happen when he's righty. is he's going to still try to kick this leg, and if he's not having success with the outside, try to kick the outside. Because I'm protecting this really good, he's probably going to start going to the inside. When he goes to the inside, moving it out of the way is totally okay. So he goes, I can definitely do the same thing. Just move my leg, boom, get myself back into a stance. That's totally okay to do. But what hurts Elias, if I want to check it, is I just turn my knee down. And like anyone that's been training for some time and has trained with someone that has a really good bladed stance and checks the inside of the low kick really well is not going to throw too many punches or too many kicks to the inside leg. Okay, it's just not going to happen. I used to try to figure it out. It's difficult to try to figure out. If someone can check that inside low kick really well, like you're really asking for your foot to be broken, especially if this person is really chucking it. So another way that we can protect this lead leg from the other side of the attack is just simply by like turning that knee down. And it's not a giant move. I don't do anything with my hands. I don't go like this. It's super tiny, and that's almost what makes it the most effective, is because I don't need to be a genius or even really in that great of a position for me and Elias to be fighting. He kick and me just do this. It's like the easiest shit ever, and the easy answers are the best answers, okay? So the 3 ways that we defend ourselves when we're in this stance that we're going to talk about for now is Elias goes to kick my front leg, I move it, okay? He goes to positionally get an advantage off to my rear side, which is more like safe for him. I L-step, correct myself. He takes that step again, I circle, I keep him in front. If I want to attack him after he attacks me, boom, he throws. Usually I want to get myself all the way out of the way. If he goes to try to kick the inside of my leg, boom, I'm going to check that leg or check that kick just by turning my knee down like this. Super, super effective. I would highly recommend adding those 3 things in if you are going to stand in a bladed stance. Now let's get into our offense in our bladed stance, okay? We'll first address the power side, and then we'll address our lead side, okay? Even though the lead side can get thrown with some power, terminology and linguistics and stuff can really throw you off. Don't make a mistake in thinking that like the left side can't be hard either, because it definitely can, okay? But we'll refer to this as the rear side or the power side just because it's more traditional. I guess it clicks mostly for people, but don't get it twisted. This cannot be powerful. This can definitely be powerful depending on the situation, okay? But the first way that we'll talk about this, the techniques are going to be really, really simple. When I'm in my bladed stance, my round kick is really going to fire off from here, okay? It's also going to be a round kick where I don't really care too much about throwing it soft. I want this round kick when I'm in my bladed stance to really rip into Elias. The way that I'm going to do that is, like we talked about before in the squared stance, is rotating with this down leg, boom, here. But also the way that we're going to make this just a little bit more safe, because if me and Elias are fighting and I'm not square, when I'm square and I throw my round kick, my head goes off to the side. When I'm in a bladed stance and I go to throw my round kick, usually my head stays in the same place, and that matters, okay? So when we throw our round kick, I'm really going to try to rip it by twisting, okay? That's not going to get my head as much out of the way as if I'm in a squared stance. So typically I'll need to adjust my angle just by taking a tiny step left, right to the left. Boom. If Elias circles this way, even better. Bang, I kick him, okay? If I step and he doesn't move, that doesn't matter either. I kick him because my head is off of the line. So super easy technique. I take a tiny step, I reload myself. I don't take a tiny step and get tall. That sometimes happens when people try to just focus on the mechanics of it and what's happening. You want to keep yourself low. It's about position. I readjust. I throw my round kick hard, okay? Same thing with the teep. On this back leg, I have a lot of access to this rear side teep, to the body, to the face. I usually want to set it up still by stepping off to the side and then throwing. The reason you don't have to as much when you're throwing straight attacks is because it's like if I had a spear, which is essentially kind of what I'm doing when I'm teeping. When I have a spear, Elias has to get around the spear, okay? He can't go through the spear. So when I'm throwing straight attacks, especially with my legs, it's not as important that I get my head on the outside of something, assuming that I'm doing it at the correct time. So what I mean is I don't need to take this big step for my head to be safe when I'm throwing my teep, because the teep does that on its own. When I throw the teep, Elias can't close that distance if I'm throwing this at the right time. Like I said, if he closes the distance now, it's a problem, but that's typically not how people throw their teep. They throw it long, and I don't need to have my head in a really weird spot because almost always my leg is going to be longer than my opponent's arms. Maybe not you because you're kind of a freaky little guy, but is your arm longer than my leg? I kind of want to see. Throw your jab all the way out. Nope. Maybe. I thought maybe. But on the right side, boom. I teep. I don't necessarily always have to take this angle. You're a little bit better off if you do sometimes. But if you want to just rip the teep from a bladed stance, that's a really good attack to do. The last offensive attack on our power side is going to be, I call them darts, okay? I don't really know what they're really called, but I call them darts. The way that we're going to throw this dart is I'm in a bladed stance. Going in this direction can sometimes be sketchy if you don't have some cover fire happening at the same time. So when me and Elias are fighting each other, and I want to step into this space, or maybe Elias is giving me a lot of pressure forward, and I don't want to exit towards my open side, which we're going to talk about a lot in the next little section of the videos when we talk about hand position. Circling off into your open side is definitely something that you have to know how to do, but it can get really sketchy really quick if you don't have the proper hand position techniques. But like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute. But when me and Elias are fighting, and I want to get out of the way because he's either giving me pressure or maybe I still want to crack him, we're going to throw our dart, okay? I almost think of the dart like a pitcher. They load up on one foot, they drive all their energy off that foot, and then they don't really care how they land. The reason that pitchers don't need to worry about how they land is because no one's going to try to punch them after they threw the ball. If they threw the ball and then someone tried to crack them, I guarantee you a pitcher would throw the punch very, very much different. But with the dart, because you're putting yourself or you're putting your head and all your targets in a fairly safe spot, you can kind of fall into it a little bit, okay? So the dart looks like this. I'll hit your hand. The dart looks like this, where I'm really like kind of falling into the shot. A lot of the power is coming off of this push, and I'm kind of landing where it's not like a cross, because a good cross, in my opinion, is very like positional. Like I'm like underneath my body still, like my shoulders, hips, my legs are still underneath me. I don't have like a ton of weight on one side. When I dart, I really don't care how much weight is in each leg. I'm focused on getting my head to the outside, boom, and throwing my punch at the same time, okay? That's important because when I am in this stance and I get sick of circling towards this lead side, when Elias starts closing distance, he's going to start to be able to target me if I always do this. Whereas if occasionally he goes to step in, I either dart or he steps in and I adjust this direction. It changes it. It makes him have to think about more things. And anytime someone is thinking more about things when you're fighting them, that's usually the better case. So when we dart, I push big off my right foot. I kind of catch myself. Boom. And then from here, usually I'm in a pretty safe spot where I just exit that direction. I can't because the cage is there. If we scooch over a little bit though, I'll dart, boom, and then just readjust here. You cover a lot of ground. You put your body in like a really safe spot, boom, and you get yourself out. Works a little bit better in open stance, which again, we'll talk about later. Sorry, I keep saying that. But if Elias is in an open stance, I'm going towards his backside, which makes this a lot less typical for him to like throw that side kick, whereas if he's in the normal stance and I go to dart and he throws right kick at the same time, boom, that can really suck, okay, even if my guard is up. But when he's switched, it's not as common. Doesn't mean that he can't, because if I do go to throw my dart and he like flicks up a kick, boom, that can definitely happen. But again, it's like a little bit more challenging to do. It's not as common. So when we dart, we push big, boom, we point our forehead. You definitely don't dart like this. You point your forehead, you adjust, and then you get yourself safe. You come back into your stance, okay? I use a lot of these like against some of the guys that like hit really hard, because it is like a really good way to like crack someone at the same time that you're getting an angle. Like I did it against Song a few times, but then Song started to pick up on it, so I had to stop doing it. but definitely a really good attack for being elusive while also giving yourself some cover fire. The lead side techniques that we're going to talk about, a couple of them are going to be just space keepers. So super simple, just throwing our jab, okay? When I'm in this bladed stance, I have like a really good jab from here. My shoulders are giving me more extension opposed to a squared stance. I really have to rotate to get that extension. When I'm in a bladed stance, I'm already in that extension, so my jab can really cover a lot more ground, or at least make it appear like I'm covering a lot more ground. So when I throw my jab from my bladed stance, it's really long opposed to when I'm in a squared stance and I rotate like this, it can just make for like kind of a weird punch. Where if I don't rotate that much when I'm in my squared stance, it's not nearly as long. So when I'm in my bladed stance, having a good jab is really important. Boom, back into my stance. Don't do this with your elbow, okay? That's gonna like give up a lot of this side. It's gonna make your punch come at like a weird angle. Keep everything in to where if something was right here, you wouldn't hit it. So your elbow stays in. When you jab in a bladed stance, boom, come back, boom, come back, boom, come back. The other way that we're gonna keep our partner away from us is by side kicking. We already talked, we could definitely teep with the back leg. That's a big movement. It's on your power side. If you want to just snap people off of you, teeping on that lead bladed side is going to be a little bit tricky for the same reason that the check was tricky, is that my hips just aren't really in place for it. So when I go to throw my teep, I have to like adjust my hips and then throw my teep. That's why when people are in a little bit more of a bladed stance, they'll like side kick instead. I'm not an expert on side kicking, okay? But I do use them occasionally just to keep space. A lot of the time, I'll do them to the body. Sometimes I'll do them to the leg. But it's more or less just a space keeper. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of side kicking because, one, I'm not an expert on them. And I'm not going to teach you guys anything that I don't feel like I'm adequate to teach on. So I'm not going to teach side kicking. But side kicking is a really good idea when you are in a bladed stance. There's probably a million good YouTube videos out there on that. So make sure that you guys have a good side kick also, if you are going to stand that exaggerated in a bladed stance, okay? If you're going to be like a little bit more traditional, which is like a mixture of the two, you definitely still have your lead leg teep. But like I said, we're explaining in the exaggerated versions of things, so that's kind of the way that it just kind of has to be for now. But if I'm really exaggerated, I'm side kicking. If I'm a little bit of a mixture of the two, which is what I am now, teeping's definitely a really good idea to do too. The last one that we're going to talk about is our drift hook, okay? If you do it wrong, you end up like Masvidal. If you do it right, you look like when Israel knocked out Whitaker, okay? When you are throwing round attacks in a bladed stance, it does not work the same as when you're squared. When you're throwing attacks, most of the time, in order to catch your power, and by catch your power, I mean, if I throw my right hand, I have to catch myself with my left leg, okay? If I don't do that, I fly over it, okay? So your power gets transferred into each one of your legs in almost any type of like punching motion that you're doing, whether you're squared or bladed. So when you are in a bladed stance, I throw straights really good. I can even still throw really good hooks here, but on the lead side, if I want my force going in this direction, it doesn't really like work the greatest if I'm not leaning back into that leg, okay? I can definitely put like a lot of weight into my front leg and be that and have that be how I'm grounded to the floor, but that can like add to some problems too, because like now I kind of made myself really immobile and I'm right in front of them. Whereas if I throw my hook, can you just catch my hook? A little bit further out, yeah. When I catch my hook and I drift into this leg, I can throw it with some really serious pop and not have to worry about getting myself off balance. I hope that that makes sense. Does that kind of make sense? Makes sense to you because you know everything that I do. But when we're here in this bladed stance, if I want to chuck this hook, boom, I have to go into this leg. If I don't, I'm just going to knock myself off balance because the direction of my punch is this way and there's nothing to catch me. So when I throw my hook, I throw it in a way where I'm catching myself here and throwing my hook like this, okay? That's how Israel knocked out Whitaker. He did it really smartly because Israel hides his head really well when he does some of the more like dangerous techniques or things that you would consider to be dangerous. So when like Israel was in this exchange and he throws his left hook, he leans his head way out of the way, opposed to, not to shit on Masvidal, sorry if you're watching, opposed to Masvidal, who just went to throw his hook like this, got hit with a straight because he left his head in the same spot. Don't do that when you're in a bladed stance or when you're really trying to like sit down and crack someone with a hook. You don't do it by leaving your face right in the same spot. Okay? So the 3 offensive techniques that we have is our, of course, really good long jab. Boom. Really good long jab. Boom. My shoulders are kind of set for it. Okay? We have our side kick, which I'm not going to teach. If you're less exaggerated though, which is going to be most of you guys, you still have your normal teep here. Okay? Boom. Normal teep. And we have our drift hook where if Elias takes a step at me, boom, I have to be able to hit him with some oomph. Because you don't really want to be the guy that kind of is just like mobile on the outside, or I guess you do kind of want to be this guy, but you also want to be like a threat to like fuck someone up with punches too. You don't want to just be like on the outside touching and moving and all of that stuff without having like some really serious threats that like hurt people. That was something that I had to add into my game a lot, where I could like outpoint the shit out of anyone if I wanted to, but hitting them with like some serious gusto would be something that is gusto the right word? I think all right, yeah, I think but hitting someone with the like a decent amount of gusto can become challenging for someone that wants to keep distance or be in a bladed stance and be agile. Okay? So one way to hit them with some gusto is to drift off on this hook. Boom. Put the weight into this leg. You could definitely put it into the front leg. Catch on the hand. I could definitely still put it on the front leg, but again, I've kind of made myself immobile and my head stays in the same spot. When I throw my hook and I drift off into the back leg, I'm moving my head from here to here. So if Elias goes to punch me, at the same time, I'm out of the way, and I'm able to throw it with a lot of pop because I'm really on balance here like this, opposed to throwing it and not paying attention to my feet. We'll start really simple with some of these drills that we're going to do for being in a bladed stance. The most easy and the most like digestible way to like practice doing this stance is just going to be numbers with a pull and then like a 1-2 or a 1 or just a 2 on your counter, okay? So what that means is me and Elias are fighting each other. I'm staying in my bladed stance. If that's natural to you, keep doing it. If it's unnatural to you but you want to get good at it, you'll have to force yourself to do it. But when I'm in my bladed stance, Elias calls a 3. After I hit my combination, because like I said, being agile and being mobile is more or less, in my opinion, the best way to keep yourself safe in a bladed stance. Elias is going to punch back at me. I'm going to get both my feet out the way and then come back and throw my 1-2, okay? He calls 2. I hit my 1-2. I move myself out of space. I come back and I throw my 1-2. You guys can do this a couple different ways though. When I move backwards, that can't change. So after I throw my 3 or whatever, when I move backwards, my head has to stay down. Try not to do this, even though I fuck that up sometimes. I know that I do. Don't say that I do. I know it. Okay? Try to keep your forehead pointed. When you move both of your feet. Boom. I get out of the way. He swings. When I come back in, I can come back in with either a good 1-2, boom, boom, where I'm stepping on each one of my punches, stepping on this jab, stepping on this cross, or I can pop myself back in. So after I throw my 3, boom, boom, I pop myself back in, and the punches go once I've established a connection to the ground. So number, pull with either a step 1-2 or a replant and then a 1-2, whatever you want to do. The important piece is that you're learning to throw offense, get yourself out of danger with using your mobility, and then come back in and be able to hurt someone. 2, bam, bam, out, bam, bam, whatever.
3.
Boom, out, bam, bam,
Cross hook.
boom, boom, out,
Jab.
boom, boom,
4.
boom. Oops, that's okay too.
4.
If you want to just come back with the jab, that's cool, Forgan. If you want to come back with just the cross, that's cool. Just make sure that you're moving out of the way with both of your feet for now at least. The last drill that we're going to do for our bladed stance is just numbers, and then we're really going to protect this space and our lead leg, okay? So me and Elias are partners. He calls a number.
2.
1, 2. He goes to attack me on this side, either positionally or with like an actual attack, like a kick. I'm going to L step myself out, and then I again want our 1, 2 afterwards. The 1, 2 isn't necessary to do all the time right afterwards. It's more of just a check to make sure that you're on balance enough to throw your 2 punches. Okay, so if I throw a combination, 1, 2, 3, and Elias goes to attack, and I want to L step myself out the way and not attack, that's completely okay. A good check to see if like you're on balance is to obviously throw like a couple punches and make sure that they're good, okay? So if he throws 3, boom, I L step myself out the way, come back, throw my 1, 2. 3, L step myself out the way, line him back up, throw my 1, 2.
2.
Boom, boom. Boom, boom.
Jab.
Boom. Boom, boom.
4.
Boom, boom, boom. Okay, the other way is, of course, just exiting. Exiting, nothing really changes. You're just taking tinier steps with the L step, so 4. Circle, circle, circle. Then throw my 1, 2 as he starts to gain an advantage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Circle, circle. Bang, bang. Get him right back in front of us. He wants to be over here. We get him back in front of us. We hit him with our 1, 2. 4. Boom. Boom, boom. 4. Boom, boom. Last one, if he kicks to the inside of the leg, I throw a combination. 3. He tries to kick me on the inside. I check that kick. If you want to answer, of course, answer. But for now, we'll just get rid of it by checking the kick. 3. Boom. 2. Boom. Checking. Okay? All the while, I still want you guys working your rear or your power side stuff and your lead side stuff. So if Elias, it doesn't always need to be numbers either, because like I said, being in a bladed stance can get really tricky when you're trying to throw like longer combinations, especially with your hands. So if Elias wants, he can just call for round kicks, teeps, or darts, okay? So we're moving. Jab, boom, round kick. When he goes to attack, I reset myself, okay? If it's a rear teep, high teep. When he goes to attack, I L step, I get myself back in front of him. If he's like stepping in hard, boom, I'm hitting my dart, getting myself in a safe spot and moving. And the numbers can more or less look like that too. They don't need to be set numbers as much as they can just be like round kick, teep, dart, and then all the while keeping this space and my lead leg really safe. So round kick, boom, bang. He goes to throw, I L step out. If I want a 1, 2, I can. He calls for a teep, boom, I teep. I keep that space safe, that's hard to say, space safe, by shuffling or circling, and my 1, 2. If he wants to decide to get aggressive, boom, I dip my head, I put myself in a safe spot, and I get myself out of the way. All the while, also while you're working this lead side. So Elias calls for a jab, boom, I hit my jab. If he wants a round kick, that's my power side, he calls jab, I hit that, he goes to inside low kick me or outside low kick me, boom, I check, come back if I want to, all the while working here. If he decides to get aggressive, I put my weight into this leg, I throw my lead hook, almost the same as a dart, where I'm really committing my body, here, and my head goes into a safe place as I'm throwing something with some power, because I'm grounded to the floor. It's gonna hurt if I get hit while I'm grounded to the floor. So to recap, because I know that was a lot of information, that was a lot of information for me too. Rooted and bouncy or floating styles. This is really important because this isn't necessarily like a mechanical thing as much as it's feeling it in your own body and being able to recognize it when it's on TV, when it's actually happening, or when you're standing in front of an opponent and you're noticing that they're really rooted to the floor versus if they're really bouncy to the floor. The biggest advantage to being rooted to the floor is that your reaction time is going to be quicker than the bouncy person's time, okay? So when my feet are on the floor, I can fire immediately. I don't need to do this setting motion before I throw again. That is really important. That goes outside mechanics. That goes into more like physics and a physics understanding of fighting, but really important. The advantage to being a bouncy guy is going to be that you're going to be really agile and you're going to be super mobile because you're never really committing your feet super hard to the floor. So you can move in all directions, in, out, and you're never really connecting to the floor that much, okay? The other thing that we talked about is our advantages and our disadvantages to being in a squared stance versus in a bladed stance. Some of the biggest things are the targets on your body, which when I'm in a squared stance is a lot of them. I'm giving you a lot of the front of my body. I'm giving you the front of my face. I'm giving you kind of like both legs if you did want to kick both legs. But I'm giving you a lot of targets, okay? When I'm in a bladed stance, that means that I'm cutting some of these targets out and giving you really obvious ones. But if I don't have answers for how to protect the really obvious ones, like my lead leg and this space over here, then you're not going to be very good at it. You're going to get your leg chopped. You're going to get taken down a lot, or people are going to take really good angles on you, and you're not going to know why unless you watch this instructional, okay? So squared versus bladed, rooted versus bouncy, really, really important to understand so that you can get like a deeper understanding of how stance works. We already talked about the advantages and disadvantages for a while now, so I won't bore you with them, but really important that we recap all of those things. The last thing that I want to leave you guys with, and we're going to get way in particular into this and a lot more deeper in depth with this when we talk about the advantage videos, but for now, beating a rooted guy means you have to uproot that person because your reaction time is not going to be as good as a person that's rooted to the floor. It's just flat out not. That doesn't mean that your timing can't be better, but the ability that they have, say you guys are the exact same skill level, have the exact same reaction times, have the exact same brain chemistry and everything. If I'm more rooted on the floor, if you flip the coin 100 times, I'm going to win more than 50 of those times when it comes down to reaction and being able to throw a punch or a kick on the flip of a dime, which I know is not the right saying, but that's okay. Versus being a floaty guy, okay? So when you're fighting a rooted guy, you have to uproot them or else your reaction times are going to be slower. We're going to talk about that in the advantage videos. A couple of ways is making them step by positionally taking them out or by like taking angles is the more traditional way to say it. By getting positional advantages, that's going to be a really important way to uproot them, okay? Another way is to get them to commit really big on a shot. But I don't want to get too far into it because we've already had a lot of information on our stance being rooted and not, and I don't want it to bleed too much into the advantage videos. Being a bouncy guy, you definitely can be really agile. You can keep people in front of you a lot better. You're not going to be as committed to your feet, but you're not going to have the same amount of reaction time. So if you try to race the person that's rooted, you're maybe going to lose if you guys are the same skill level. You might get away with it a lot if you're better or have better timing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing good things just because it's working on people that aren't as at the same skill level as you, okay? Beating a bouncy guy, though, you usually want to hit him on exits, all of that stuff, which again we'll get into when we talk about advantages. But that pretty much sums up the entire stance course. If you guys do have questions, you guys can definitely post them below. I'll take a look at them, try to do my best to answer them, and at the very least, have another instructional in the future that covers a lot of the topics that maybe I haven't covered in the stance. But for now, let's move on to our hand position.